Good evening and welcome. You're tuned into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio, and tonight we present The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. This movie's out in theaters. It is the third installment in the base Conjuring universe. Of course, you've got the Nun and Annabelle movies and La Llorona are all out there as part of this broadened universe. But the third and possibly final installment of the original trilogy is out, and if you have not had a chance to see it, it's a great movie. I really enjoyed this one. It's a step different than the other two have felt, and I like that. I like that they're kind of changing with every movie that they've released. There's also a documentary, they call it a shock doc, on Discovery Plus and Travel Channel, The Devil Made Me Do It, and it is an examination of this case. Joining us tonight, a good friend of our program. He is a paranormal investigator, author, writer, researcher. He is the host of our New England Legends podcast. We'll have a link for that on today's show as well. It is our good friend, Jeff Belanger. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Dave, good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so our heads are almost as large as they are in real person. Hey, so this is an interesting case, right? And, you know, the time that it happened, shortly after the Exorcist movie had come out, right?
Yep.
Just at the beginning of the satanic panic that was going on in the 80s. And you've got this interesting case that involves demonic possession, an exorcism that goes horribly awry, and a murder that may potentially be attached to this. And it's easy to say, well, listen, those were the 70s and 80s, this type of thing. Obviously, we've gotten brighter. You know, the concept that the devil made me do it just is not real anymore. I have two news stories from this week, Jeff, I wanted to share with you in the audience and get your take on it. I specifically like this first one. A Florida teen allegedly committed burglary to pay for college, which is honorable. Really, it is, right?
Sure.
Except for the fact that he said it was Satan that tempted him to do it. A Florida teen was arrested Friday on felony armed burglary charges during his interrogation at the Indian River County Sheriff's Office. He allegedly told law enforcement he was tempted to commit the robberies by Satan, and that he had planned to use any money he acquired towards college. It's kind of one of those Robin Hood feels, right? You're stealing from the rich to better your life so that you don't have to be in a life of crime. It's a strange dichotomy. Raphael Wolowski, an 18-year-old resident of Vero Beach, was picked up Friday evening just a few blocks from his family's home after allegedly using a broken window to enter the home of a neighbor who lived across the street, according to police documents. He was reportedly carrying a knife with a 2.5-inch blade. The defendant said he decided to burglarize homes to get money for college. He also said the devil kept tempting him to steal. And that's according to the arrest affidavit report. The report also reveals that the neighbor called 911 about a burglary in progress, saying someone broke a house window and was still in her home. She apparently described him to emergency services as a white male wearing a red hat and blue shirt. Wolowski was found nearby soon after wearing a camouflage cap and with red writing on the sides and a blue shirt. When officers stopped him and read him his Miranda rights, Wolowski allegedly admitted to the crimes as well as 2 other robberies in the same neighborhood, and he was taken to the sheriff's office. The report made no mention of Wolowski requesting a lawyer after he confirmed he had been read his Miranda rights. Instead, he appeared to willingly give police a step-by-step breakdown of this burglary. The affidavit says the defendant stated that he left his residence on Berkshire Circle and walked across the street to a neighbor's house, also on Berkshire Circle. He cut the screen with a knife, entered the patio, looked through the window leading into the main living room of the home, and saw a woman inside. He described her as possibly Hispanic with dark hair and possibly wearing a black and white dress. He then ran from the home. The patrol deputies later made contact with the homeowner, who fit the description of the woman the defendant described. So there's really no way of getting out of this at this point when you've described perfectly the defendant whose home you've broken into, and she's described you pretty well. There's no mention of details of the other 2 burglaries. Wolowski remains in Indian River County Jail, having not made the $75,000 bail, and faces 3 charges of armed burglary, dwelling, structure of conveyance. His arraignment is scheduled for August 13th. So that's, okay, a random story about the devil made.
Hold on, Dave. Ironically, $75,000 pays for about 1 year of college.
Maybe he just wanted to test the waters.
Yeah.
He wasn't looking for.
Yeah.
Now,
no, but right. It's the devil made me do it is as old as the hills. But yeah, of course, it's still turning up today.
The second story we've got, teen allegedly drowned his father, claiming to try to baptize him to exorcise a demon named Dirty Dan out of him. Yeah, a young man allegedly killed his father, then claimed he baptized the man to exorcise demons, including one named Dirty Dan. Jack Callahan, 19, appeared in court Monday in the death of Scott Callahan, 57, in Plymouth County, Massachusetts, right in your neck of the woods here, buddy, according to local reports. Police described the matter as a fatal water incident in early social media posts, saying they received...
Fatal water. Okay, no,
Yeah.
that's the name of my band, by the way. Fatal water incident. I'm sorry, go on.
And we're not laughing at the crime. We're laughing at the absurdity of the things written.
Right.
They call it a matter of fatal water incident. In early social media posts saying they received a call Monday morning of a missing man. First responders found the victim submerged in a pond. He was later pronounced dead despite attempts to save his life. The medical examiner has yet to offer an official determination for the cause and manner of death, but the Jack Callahan has pleaded not guilty to murder. Preliminary findings is that Scott suffered from waterlogged lungs, broken blood vessels in the eyes, and an abrasion on the head, according to a statement from the office of the Plymouth District Attorney. The story is that Jack Callahan went to a bar in Boston to get his father, who should not have been drinking, according to CBS affiliate WBZ. The men took an Uber to Island Creek Pond in the town of Duxbury, where they lived, and the father is alleged to have struck the son, and the altercation progressed to the pond, the younger Callahan allegedly said. Further allegations complicate things beyond a mere attempt to claim self-defense. Defendant Callahan allegedly said he thought he was baptizing his father to exorcise demons, one of them named Dirty Dan. Prosecutor Shannon Buckingham told the court, according to a report by independent television station WHDH, he described that he was holding his father in the pond on the back like a baby, and that he continually dunked the father's head in the water for about 4 to 8 times. Then that's when the father started to cough and choke. He would lift his head up, and then when his father started to fight and strike, he would push the head back down under the water. Buckingham told the WBZ report he did so until his father was no longer struggling and began floating. I left him there to decide. You can come to heaven or with me to hell. I think he chose hell, defendant Callahan said, according to the prosecutor. Defense lawyer Kevin Reddington reportedly requested a mental health evaluation and said his client might be a danger to himself. That seems like a bit of an understatement to me, Jeff.
Yeah, I'd say so.
The concept that the devil is involved in our bad activities, right? Nobody wants to believe that our neighbor, our friend, our lover could be a killer, that we could have been so close to this person all along and not realizing the power that they might actually wield and what kind of anger and rage lies just underneath the surface. So we almost want to put that off on something, especially supernatural, right? It must be an influence of the devil. We saw that, unfortunately, with the death and suicide of our friends, Mark and Debbie Constantino. Can you believe that's 6 years already since their passing? Yeah. And people immediately jump to the fact that there must have been demonic influence, spiritual influence, something that caused this couple to break down the way they did and end in murder-suicide. Knowing what we know from the outset, you and I have been very vocal about the fact that it's probably just two people that were in a very dysfunctional alcoholic relationship, and that's what really took place. But it shows the willingness of people to want to put that somewhere besides on just the human dynamic of who we are.
The devil's always been a scapegoat, right? Always. Puritans used to have erotic dreams. And they would say, wait a minute, I'm of pure heart. I go to church. I pray every day. I read the Bible. Obviously, this is an incubus or a succubus. This is a demon coming to me in my sleep and trying to tempt me. There's no way that came from within me. So therefore, it's an external force. I'm a good person, yet I just did a horrible thing. Therefore, it must not have been me. I think of myself as a good person. So some horrible influence must have taken over, devil, demon, whatever. The reality is, as we know, there is evil in the world. I mean, just
Right.
look at the news, right? People do unspeakable acts, horrible atrocities, mass murder, just every horrible thing you can do to a person. People do it. We also know, thankfully, that there's good in the world. We've seen it.
Mhm.
We've seen just acts of kindness, from random small acts to just big things and everything in between. And I think all those forces are within all of us. And some of us, kind of yield to one more than the other. And depending on your moral compass, your upbringing, the influences around you, we tend to lean either way. That being said, I do recognize that some people do have their problems, right? Drug addiction, alcoholism, stuff like that. And if you want to call that a demon or a monkey on your back, I get it. But at the ultimately, you have to still take responsibility for your actions at some point.
Now, here's where it gets interesting. Obviously, we have logic on our side to be able to look at these cases in a somewhat rational way. But we've also worked in the paranormal field and know quite a few people that have dealt with dark presence, demonic infestations, people that we know, like, and trust. So should we be so quick to dismiss the concept that something demonic could, in fact, affect someone to create violence or do something outside of their nature? Or is their nature, again, is this one of those moments where their nature is possibly prone to it, and that's what the evil is looking for, is that person that already has that fracture so that they can enter and move through them?
I love the Jewish concept of spirit attachment, the dybbuk, right? So a dybbuk, it means like cling or cleave to, and a dybbuk can be good. If you're of the Jewish faith, a spirit could attach itself to you, like you're trying to quit smoking, and a spirit that did that in life might attach itself to you and sort of help you through that. And then once you quit smoking, it leaves you peacefully and everything's fine. However, there can be sort of like bad influence dybbuks. You want to do drugs, you want to rob a liquor store. A spirit that might have done that in life might cling to you. And there is a Jewish exorcism, and it's quite beautiful, actually. The rabbi will blow the shofar it's like this ram horn to try to separate the human and the spirit attachment, and then heal them both, right? Heal the spirit. Go forth. You don't need to be here anymore. You have rights, and you should be happy too. And the person, of course, needs to be left alone. And so I like the idea that like is drawn to like. So yes, while I think dark forces can be let in, you put yourself into a place to allow those dark forces in. And so ultimately, whatever bad thing happens, still you got to put the blame on the person, not on the demonic force, right? Like, what's first, the cart or the horse, right? I get it, but I think all of us have a responsibility to be good neighbors, good citizens, and work to keep those forces away, so we're not a danger to others. I mean, hopefully not ourselves either, but at the very least, not a danger to others.
Now, that's where this case that we're going to talk about tonight gets sticky, because, again, we've always been told you have to invite this in. You have to be kind of a willing participant, yet David Glatzel was not a willing participant. And why would he be affected? So we'll discuss that. Now, for those of you that don't know, this case, again, one of the famous cases by Ed and Lorraine Warren, featured in the new Conjuring movie. And I want to start a little bit with history from you, Jeff. Aside from them just being these legendary figures that many of us only know through the movies and books, I know I was lucky enough to meet Lorraine 2 or 3 occasions and have her on the show 3 or 4 times throughout the years. But you actually grew up knowing the Warrens and working with them, right? So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and in fact, this case, this Conjuring 3 Devil Made Me Do It case, is pretty special because, to me anyway, it's personal. It started in Newtown, Connecticut, which is where I grew up. So Newtown, geographically, is on the western side of Connecticut, and it is the town just to the north of Monroe, which is where Ed and Lorraine Warren live, and just south of Brookfield, which is where this exorcism and the case would really take off. So we're talking about 3 towns in a row, and not very big towns. So growing up in Newtown in the 80s, the Warrens were like local celebrities. The first time I met them was October, and they were giving a program at the library, just like I do now, like just 20, 30 people, locals, get invited to the library, and the Warrens would share their case files and play audio clips and show a literal slideshow with like a slide projector and talk about some of the stuff they did. And I was just so intrigued because I had friends who claimed their houses were haunted in town. Nothing scary, but just matter of fact. And in Newtown, I remember there was a place right on Main Street. There was this, it was a home that was turned into a business. And people would say like, oh, that house is really haunted, like scary haunted. And you'd be like, okay, whatever. And then someone would say, no, the Warrens checked it out. And like, that was the end of it, right? That's the last word. Oh, well, maybe it is then. Fair enough. So that's where I first met them. And as I got older, you'd go see them every fall. You'd go see their Halloween program where they'd share real ghost stories. And then when I started to become a writer in college, I started interviewing them. So I'd go to their house and I'd get to like go through their museum and interview Ed and Lorraine and sit in their kitchen. And so, yeah, I first met them when I was 12 and just, Lorraine went to our church and you'd see them in the grocery stores. And like I said, very much local celebrities, right? Not big mobs, nothing. They are way more famous today than they ever were back then.
Getting a chance to sit down with them in their natural environment. Mm-hmm. There's a lot said about Ed and Lorraine Warren, a lot of conjecture of were they fakes? Were they real? You had a chance to see and be around them. Did they take this as seriously at home? Was it a little bit more glib and light, or were they always kind of in that serious tonality about what they were dealing with?
So Lorraine, and because you've met her, Lorraine was like everybody's grandma. And she was like that in the 80s too, even before she got as old. I mean, she lived, 90s?
92 when she passed away last year. Right?
Yeah. So when she was like, you expect a woman in her 80s to be grandmotherly, but even, 20 years before that, when she was in her 60s, she called everybody honey, just like, honey, let me tell you, honey. And just, very sweetheart, kind-hearted people, both of them. Ed was very funny. He could be funny and charming. And then he could turn on a dime and get real serious when talking about demons. So at our little library programs, he'd just be like working the audience, like, oh, anybody see a ghost? Yeah, Ghostbusters, sure, right? And just like funny and charming, and then just stop and be like, let's talk about something real, though, something that really happened. And the room would just sort of be like, ooh, you'd kind of get choked up. I sat in their kitchen once interviewing them. And their phone, this is, 1996, maybe. And the phone used to just ring all the time because their phone number was listed. There was really no internet yet. I mean, there was internet, but they didn't have it. It was, people weren't using it widely. And the phone rang all the time. And Lorraine would just pick it up. And I would hear, that side of the conversation over and over. And it was the same almost every time. Hello? Yes, honey. Yeah, this is Lorraine Warren. Oh, honey, that sounds bad. Oh, honey, is there a Ouija board in the house? Oh, you got to get rid of that, honey. You got to get rid of that right away. Okay. Yeah. All right. Good luck to you. Okay. All right. Bye-bye. And then it would ring again. And that same phone call, like, wow. Is there a Ouija board? Yep, there's a Ouija board. And and over and over and again, they would take the call and they would talk to people. It was amazing.
Yeah, I know in talking with Lorraine on our show and meeting her at a few live events, talking to her off stage, she would tell me that, they answered the phone day or night because you never knew when something horrific might happen. And I know she took it very seriously in concern for these people that would call in. Here's a quick little a bit of trivia, Jeff. Do you know that there was a movie about this case in 1983 that was released?
I didn't know that.
And here's one of the stars of the movie. This is a scene from the movie. Kevin Bacon. It's one of his first acting roles. And guess who played they didn't have the legal rights to Ed and Lorraine's story, but they were writing it off of everything that was being told in the news. So this is the movie, and it is on YouTube, The Demon Murder Case from 1983, starring Andy Griffith as Ed Warren.
Andy Griffith. And Kevin Bacon, of course, lives in Connecticut now.
Yeah. So
not far from Brookfield.
Pretty cool. And it is, like I said, it's on YouTube. You can go watch the full 1980s cheeseball effect. But I had a laugh when I read that that Andy Griffith played the Ed Warren character, although he's not Ed Warren, but he and his wife are the paranormal investigators, and they go out. So it's worth a watch. Go check it out on the YouTubes.
I will check that out. That's so funny. Yeah. So I can tell you this. So the first Conjuring, the house in Rhode Island,
Right.
they never talked about that case ever. Right? Like not once. This one, they talked about. They talked about it quite a bit. Even I remember hearing about it because, I mean, shoot, we were ground zero. I remember Ed saying this all started here in Newtown, and then it went to Brookfield. And Brook, there you drive it just a couple miles and you're in Brookfield. So it was it really hit home to think like, wow, this horrible, evil thing happened in our town. And not only that, I remember hearing stories as a kid. This was the Satanic Panic. This was the 80s. And they'd say, there's a pentagram, and Newtown is one of the points on the pentagram, which, by the way, any town on earth could be a point on a pentagram, right? It's just wherever you start it, right?
Right.
But still, it was one of those things that went around and you went, whoa, look, if you line up a pentagram, you could put the top right on Newtown. And then you're like, you can. Sure, you can.
But where does the rest of the star go? What does it touch it? Or if it's touching Amityville and Rhode Island, and it's touching all these major haunted places, then maybe you've got something. Then we're talking about a paranormal ley line situation, right?
Right. So, it was because Ed would tell us there's satanic cults in town. The police call us in when they find things they don't understand, and we gather that stuff and bring it back to our museum. And Ed's attached museum, their house in Monroe was at the end of a cul-de-sac. It was like off the main drag, Route 25. There was this street, and then they were at the end, and it was just a simple split level ranch. They weren't wealthy people. It was a middle class house with like this attached building that was the museum, and every kind of thing in there, from Annabelle. I remember meeting Annabelle face to face when I was, the first time I was at their museum, which I was probably like 16, I guess, when I was in there. And the real Annabelle scared me way more than anything in the movie, because the movie one, right? Like you bring the movie doll home for your daughter. Your daughter would be like, "Yeah, get it away!" Right? No one's cuddling with that thing. But the real one, of course, is a Raggedy Ann doll. And my sister had the same one on her bed, the exact same. And I was just like, oh, right. I mean, that's scarier to me than like that horrific thing in the movie.
Let me say this about that. Many people called out the Conjuring movie and Annabelle because that's not even the real Annabelle. The real Annabelle was a Raggedy Ann. Right. And there was no way that the company that owns Raggedy Ann is going to allow their beloved character to be shown as a demonic creature in a movie. So it's not Hollywood faking it. It's simply, we don't have the rights. And if we get them, we're not going to pay $1 million for that. I'm betting, because I can't see Raggedy Ann and Andy still being big sellers. I'm wondering if they're kicking themselves like M&M's did when Reese's Pieces got the gig with E.T. and their stock went through the roof, right? Should they have done that? Would there be a renaissance in dolls? Well, this case that we're talking about opens up 41 years ago. As a matter of fact, tomorrow, the 3rd, right, is when this thing started. July 3rd.
Today, July 1st.
Really? Today.
Yeah.
All right. Even better. So we're
Today.
Right there. For those of you listening on the podcast on Friday, you're sandwiched in between the two. So you're still right in the wheelhouse. It's a perfect time. But it starts off with this just very basic part of life, right? There's a family, and the daughter and her boyfriend are about to strike out on their own and rent a place and kind of live their own lives. And things take a twist. They take a really bizarre turn.
It's complicated, this one. So just to set it up, Debbie Glatzel, she's 26 years old, and she has a 7-year-old son. And her boyfriend is Arne Johnson. He's 18. And before you start doing the math, the son was from a previous relationship. Mm-hmm. They're living in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is a city. And at that time, not the nicest city that you could be in. Debbie has a roommate who has 3 daughters. She's divorced, and so they're all in this apartment. They're trying to get by, and so they figure, hey, if we pool all our money, we could move out of Bridgeport, and there's this house in Newtown that's perfect. And Arne is a tree surgeon and a landscaper, and you're better off being out in the country than in the city, where people actually need your services. So they find this house, and it's a house with like an attached apartment. And the idea is that Arne and Debbie's son will live in the house, and the attached apartment will be perfect for Debbie's roommate and her 3 children, and they can all live there. Need some fixing up, need some TLC, but that's okay. Arnie's young. He's ready to do it. And it's July 1st that they arrive at the house in Newtown. And immediately there are problems. For example, the furniture from the previous tenant is still there, some of it. And they're like, come on, so that's already a problem. Problem 2 is that the attached apartment, there's a woman living there, and it's the daughter of the landlord. And she's like, I have no intention of leaving anytime soon. And so now, so big problems, right? Just from the minute you get up there. Now, Debbie's family, the Glatzels, have come over from Brookfield to help move in. Again, just a couple miles up the road. Just, there happens to be a town line in between. And so Debbie's 3 younger brothers come in, and Debbie's mother walks in, and she's the first one to say, this house doesn't feel right. Never mind the furniture. Never mind that the landlord's kid's still in the attached apartment. This place just doesn't feel right, and she's uncomfortable. And so already, imagine that. Imagine you're ready to by the way, you've pooled every penny you have to pull this off, right? There's no wiggle room financially. So you get there and it's just problems. But of course, it's about to get a lot worse.
All right, so let's dig into that, and then I want to kind of do a comparison to another very famous case that the Warrens also had a hand in, but you get them in there, David Glatzel and Alan, I believe, is the other brother, correct? They come in to help, and things start to occur. What exactly is that timeline? Do you know? I mean, is it that day as they're moving stuff around?
Yeah, so it's day 1, and Debbie's putting her brothers to work, as you would on move-in day. Right. So she tells her youngest brother, David, who's 11 years old at the time, go, bring this box back to the master bedroom and sweep up for us. And so David goes back there, and suddenly he's pushed down by an unseen force onto the bed, and he's freaked out. There's no one back there with him. And then he sees this old man, sort of semi-transparent. It's a ghost, clearly to him. And the old man's threatening him, take down your crucifixes at home, take down your St. Michael's prayers and your religious medals. And the kid, David's freaked out, as anyone would be, and pretty much races out of the house and goes and sits under a tree on the front lawn of the house and refuses to go back inside. He's done for the day. That's that. His 2 brothers will go back in that room to carry some boxes as well. And they claim that the door slammed on them and they couldn't get the door open, and they're screaming and banging. And finally they get the door open, and something's weird. Something is really weird in this house, but it's only those 3 brothers that notice it. And so this is all day 1. Everybody's uncomfortable. And of course, people are angry because this is not what we agreed to, right? The furniture should be gone. That apartment should be available. Debbie's roommate from Bridgeport's getting ready to move up. And now what do we do? And so that first night, it's decided that everybody's going to sleep at the Glatzel's house because this house is in no state to have Debbie and Arnie stay there. So they all go back to Brookfield. And that's when things start to evolve quickly. All still July 1st. And the three brothers are talking. And suddenly the 2 brothers are like, something weird happened in that back bedroom. And then David says, wow, something really weird happened to me. And that's when he goes out to tell the adults. He goes into the kitchen. And he says, I got to tell you something. I think there's a ghost in that house. It's haunted. And at first they're like, you're just an over-imaginative kid. You're just, whatever. You're tired. It's been a long day. But then David says, and this part freaked me out. So David says, I can see the old man from here in Newtown, miles away, hills and trees and all kinds of things in the way. But he can see the old man. And he says, he's angry and he's coming this way. He can see the spirit coming from the next town over toward the house in Brookfield, getting closer and closer. And pretty soon he says he's here. And then he doesn't call him the old man anymore. He calls him the beast. And what's interesting, I thought, in all of the interviews I've watched, not only in the Shock Doc, The Devil Made Me Do It on Discovery Plus, but in other vignettes that have been placed on the internet and on other shows throughout history, they all stand by the fact that David Glatzel, although a young boy with a big imagination, was not prone to telling stories or lies. This was outside of his normal. Right. Absolutely. And so this kid is suddenly scared, and he's seeing something that no one else can see in the house. It's important to point out at this point that the Glatzel family are devout Roman Catholics. They go to church regularly. And so when things start to get stranger in the next couple of days, where David is now tormented, right? Something's pushing him, scratching him. They're worried about him. And it doesn't seem to be psychological because they know their kid. And again, like, what happened? He just spent a couple hours in this house in Newtown. He didn't go away for a week and something horrible. It was just what happened. And so they reach out to their clergy, which is what you would sort of expect. And
Right.
keep in mind, this is 1980. There are no reality shows on the paranormal. There's no internet, right? You go to your church and you keep it quiet. And that's exactly what they did. And the priests come out and they say blessings on the house. They light candles. They leave religious medals and things like that. But they see that there's something really wrong with young David, that he's being attacked by something that no one else can see. And that's when the clergy suggests, hey, there's this couple in Monroe that sort of looks into this stuff, sometimes even investigates for the church. You might want to call Ed and Lorraine Warren. And I can tell you, David, having grown up in that area, like, that's just something every local would know. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't be at the grocery store being like, oh yeah, house is haunted, the kid's getting attacked. But if you so much as confided in any neighbor, like, oh, something really weird is happening. If you have like 5 neighbors, 2 or 3 of them would know about the Warrens. You know what I mean? That's how it was. And so they called Ed and Lorraine Warren, and Ed and Lorraine Warren came right over. I think it was 10 o'clock at night when they came over for the very first time to check it out.
Now, let me ask you something. We're also skeptical in nature, both of us.
Sure.
Now, people need to also be aware that the Amityville horror experience and the book and the movie have all come out about this time as well. Right? So is there
a couple years earlier, but not too long?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, hey, what if, we've got this house that sucks. It's not what we were expecting, not what we promised. What if we say it's haunted and we get out of the lease that way? Do you think there was any thought about that being a part of this process? But with that said, if my understanding is the woman that did live there also witnessed and saw things. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's July 3rd when they go back to the house in Newtown. The woman that lived there before has now come to get, I think she had her waterbed there. Like, she was coming to get the last of her things. And Debbie sort of confronts her and says, hey, look, my brother seems pretty freaked out by something here, and sort of presses her. And finally the woman says, yeah, I think the back bedroom's haunted. And like, that's about the end of it. And I'm getting out of here. Like, I got my stuff. I'm gone. Good luck. That's the same time Arne Johnson goes down to the basement. And in the basement, there was this weird structure that was built of like plywood, but he couldn't get in it. It was just like this locked up thing. And it makes you uncomfortable when you can't get into something that's been placed there. And he said as he was walking out of the basement, something tapped him on the shoulder, and there was no one else down there. And that sort of freaked him out. July 3rd is when they start arguing with the landlord about, we want out of this lease. The place is haunted, number one. But to me, the bigger issue is that apartment is supposed to be empty. So we have the other person to pay the rent that we can afford. And this is not the deal at all. I would get out of that lease too. I think in this case, you got to rule out, they just didn't want the place because of ghosts. Like, they had a super rock solid excuse that no one would argue with. This is not the deal we signed on for, right? We signed on for a house and an apartment, and you're telling us it could be another month or two before that apartment's ready, and that's not going to work.
All of this is so convoluted, right? I mean, there's just so many different twists to this that don't make sense with what's going on. Now, did this roommate, do we know anything about the woman that was renting the little apartment? Was she feeling or dealing with anything supernatural? Has there ever been any reports?
Yeah, we don't know much about her. We know that she was the daughter of the landlord. So she sort of had a horse in the race to not, rock the boat too much. Plus, like, she was making problems for her mother, by not getting out of there. Or who knows what they agreed to or didn't agree to. We just know that, when they got there, this person was there, and this house is no longer going to work for really these 5-6 people, right? The roommate, the 3 daughters, Arne, Debbie, and Debbie's son. So 6 people into this house and apartment. So yeah, I think it's fair to rule out just got cold feet on a lease. They wanted out of Bridgeport. They wanted to live in a house and start their lives.
I wonder if Ed and Lorraine ever considered that the woman who stayed behind, the daughter, was she responsible for conjuring these things to get these people out of the place she did not want to leave?
So what's interesting is by July 3rd, 4th, 5th in there, like just, 5 days, right, since it started, the story is no longer anything to do with Newtown, right? Newtown is just, it's an afterthought now because the entity has moved to Brookfield, and not even really moved to Brookfield. It's attached to David. It's all about David. That's what seems to be going on. So was the house a conduit, or was the house inconsequential, really? It just was an opportunity. I don't know. And the other thing too, right?
But this being, this demon, this dark force that looks like a man during the day and a beast at night. Again, the question remains, which is one of the most terrifying elements of the story to me. Like you and I know, a lot of times it's in inviting things in. But David seemed innocent of all of this, yet the force attached itself to him. And now, so people understand, there's infestation, which is what this appears to be at first. There's oppression, which is the slowly breaking the people down, and it pressing and pushing, which is kind of what it was doing to David. Well, not kind of, it was definitely doing to David. The hopes is it's trying to break you down to the point where you give it that free reign. And it kept telling David, I want your soul, right? You belong to me. Give it up.
Actually, no, I think it said, I want a soul. I think it I don't know if it was, I forgive
Maybe
me.
Maybe it was looking for David's soul. It was the 70s and early 80s.
Right. But I think it was there for a soul. It was there to claim a soul. The assumption was David. But later on, the narrative would sort of get rewritten to like, well, why would you assume it was there for David? David was the way in for sure. And David had huge problems. However, maybe David wasn't the target. Maybe the target was anyone. It was taking whatever it could get. So, but then, the clergy gets involved, and then Ed and Lorraine get involved. And when the Warrens come over, and I think it was within days of all this beginning, right? Like once the priests come and when the Warrens come, it's in the evening, and they bring with them a medical doctor. And if I remember correctly, I think the doctor just stumbled walking up to the front door, just like, tripped over his own feet. No big deal. But then they get inside and they sit down at the table, and David made a comment about the doctor tripping. And that perked Ed Warren up immediately because no one saw it except the Warrens outside. It was just someone stumbling, So, Ed's suddenly like, you weren't there, yet this thing that happened. And so Ed started to test David, and David could see things that were happening in the other room. Well, not David, but the entity within could convey the information, sort of like seeing through walls. And now Ed Warren is kind of giving this thing his full attention. That, all right, I don't think this is fake. I don't think this is imagination. There's something really off with this kid. And now they're involved. And now Ed and Lorraine are dealing with this case as a possible possession case. And
how scary do you think it has to be for everybody involved that you go to the church, which really should be the authority on this, and you go for help? They come and they see scratch marks and bruises and many different things that are outside of that realm. And the church says, you better call Ed and Lorraine. I mean, that's kind of bizarre to me, right? That the church, who you think would be the ultimate help in this, are like, go talk to the Warrens, right? And that was Father Dennis, I think, that referred them over to Ed and Lorraine.
Right.
They come with
so
this
here's
physician.
where
Now the physician, though, this is the part that also confused me. They all see the welts and bruises, and at one point he said he was being stabbed, and there was a huge mark that appeared like he had been stabbed, not an incision, but a welt. How does a doctor come in and look at this and not think there's some kind of abuse taking place?
Okay, this is where we have to set some context for all of the things you just said, right? So the story has been told, like the book that came out, I think it was in 83, right, about this case, was very much told with Ed and Lorraine Warren as the hero. This movie, The Conjuring 3, is Ed and Lorraine Warren as the hero. And Ed would tell you, when the church is scared, they call me, right? Because and I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't think Father Dennis gave up on the Glatzels, right? They were still going to church regularly. I think he was checking in with them, but I think he also understood the more evidence that they could gather, maybe there's more that they could do for the Glatzel family, because in Catholicism, you don't just knock on the door and ask for an exorcism. Like there's a whole rigmarole, it's, there's an investigation. And so the way it works today, this is how it goes. Like if you believed you had a real problem, you would go to your church and you would talk to your priest. And if your priest suspected at all that there might be something to this, the priest informs the diocese, and the diocese has an investigator within the diocese somewhere. You don't know who it is. It's a sort of a secret, but that person gets activated to come investigate. There's a medical doctor. There's a psychological evaluation. If they still think there's something going on, they go to the archdiocese, and the archdiocese investigates, and then it goes to Rome, and then Rome sends an exorcist from somewhere in seclusion, somewhere on the planet. It's not like, they don't even train priests in exorcism anymore. That stopped in the 70s. They haven't, any modern day priest has never been trained in an exorcism. And the reason they'll tell you is because baptism is an exorcism. So that's all they know is just the rite of baptism, which includes an exorcism within it. So there's that part of it. The medical doctor that Ed and Lorraine Warren brought, let's be honest, he's a fan. He's a fan of the Warrens, and he's a fan of the paranormal, and he wants to see stuff. And so the Warrens say, "Oh, you're a medical doctor. We'll bring you on cases and we'll get your input." So yeah, I'm sure at the end of the day, that guy was still a medical doctor. But he's also working on a case with Ed and Lorraine Warren. So it's not like they hired him to come in as an independent person. He is a little bit partial and already believes in this stuff, right? And wants to see for himself. So again, just sort of setting the tone a little more. But you're right. Like if I see a kid all beat up, my first thought is like, are you safe here? And forget demons. Like, are there people doing this to you? I agree. My brain would go to the same place, but I think the Warrens and this doctor had seen enough that first night to know that this kid is speaking in strange voices. Eventually he started using language he didn't know, Latin and things like that. Voices that didn't seem to come from him, and was being attacked by unseen forces. And so at some point,
is it right that he actually gives the name when they ask who is this being? It states it is Satan.
Yeah, sure. That's what I would say too.
Right. And the reason I mention that is one of the biggest points for exorcisms and deliverance is to know the name of the demon. It's easier to extract them according to the legend and lore for exorcisms. So for it to give its name, go to the big name, right? You might be Larry, the demon cable guy, right? But you're not going to say that. You want them to really fear who you are. And I say that laughingly, but we just did an article 2 weeks back on Darkness Radio where the jinn are very popular and they believe that they are the root of most evil cases. This couple is dealing with jinn, a jinn by the name of Bob, and then another one by the name of Rita. And it's kind of like, those are like the least intimidating jinn names you could. As I had to laugh and sent the article to my ex-wife because her parents' name are Bob and Rita, and they're pastor and his wife up in Minnesota, and Bob and Rita the jinn. It just doesn't. So obviously, who are you? I'm Satan, right? You want that. There's that intimidation factor of this thing to try to mess with anybody that's coming into contact. Maybe giving them a second to pause and think, I don't want to be a part of this.
Well, even worse, Satan or not, the entity claimed that there were numbers. They wouldn't give a name, just numbers, right? There are dozens of us.
I thought it was 42, I think is what
it was 40. Yeah, 40 something. I'm not remembering the exact number, but it was like 40 something of us. And people, the people, the Glatzels would see shadows and things like that. And so imagine the panic. And I know you're a dad, I'm a dad. Keeping your kids safe is like, that's the first job. Like that's it. And so if your kid is being attacked, by something you can't see. Oh, I can't even imagine the feeling of helplessness.
It's terrifying. And as a parent, you're still a human, right? You're still, when my son comes downstairs and he's very little and he tells me there's a boy on my top bunk, Dad. And I say, honey, that's your brother. And he says, no, Dad, Nathan's sleeping. This boy's sitting on the upper rung looking down at me like this. Ooh. Right? And he tips his head and gives this creepy look. I grab him and I cuddle him and I said, okay, you're safe with Dad. And then I'm sitting there going, I don't want to go up there and mess with this thing. And right. But my other son is laying in bed next to this being. So it's like I honestly, in all honesty, for 5 minutes, I laid there debating what the right thing to do was. As a human, you're like, I don't want to see this, right? If I go up there and there's legitimately a kid sitting there staring down, I'm done. I'm cooked. So my moment in the sun, I'm in boxer shorts and a t-shirt and I'm storming up the stairs, flipping every light on the house, trying to sound as tough. Like, who are you? I'm Satan, right? I'm like, there better not be a goddamn ghost in my kid's room. I'm going to grab it by the sheet and wring it out. Rah, rah, rah. And the whole time I'm like, terrified that I'm going to run into this. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll dive deep into this case as well. Folks, I also want to make a quick mention to you. For those of you in and around the Minnesota area, if you are around and interested, you can come see me next weekend. I'll be at the Minnesota Para Unity Convention. That is the 2021 Minnesota Para Unity Con, July 8th through the 10th at the Duluth Entertainment Convention Center in Duluth, Minnesota. mnparacon.com. That's mnparacon.com. Come on out and see me. It's going to be a great time. There are a lot of paranormal celebs that are going to be on hand and doing talks and meet and greets and hanging out. So we'd love to see you. And again, there'll be a link for that in today's program guide so you can find it a little bit easier. We'll be back. We've got more to discuss right here on Darkness Radio. Welcome back to the program. Thank you for tuning in. This is Darkness Radio. And for all of you watching live, we're going to try to work in some of your questions. I know we got a lot of people hopping out there. We're going to try to get to some of these questions as we move through this, but I want to get through the bulk of this story, and I also have some audio to share in a few moments. So we're talking about the possession of David Glatzel. We haven't even gotten to the murder case yet, so I know we need to pick this pace up. But David Glatzel, this young boy, is being tormented. He's dealing with these horrific things, marks on his body. The Warrens come in to try to help. They're hearing this child speak, and you got to give it to the family. They were recording everything. They would record every time kids started acting strange. They have all this for Ed and Lorraine to review. And while they're there and helping, Ed is giving tips and hints to the family on what to do in the event that something happens when they're not there. And I've actually got some audio from that, hearing it, and it's very disturbing. I'm going to give you a fair warning on that, folks. So, Jeff, I'm going to play this out real quickly. And this is actual audio from the Conjuring case and the possession of David Glatzel.
David, in the name of Jesus, Jesus repels you. Leave this child alone. It's on your forehead. Yes, Never, you are not strong, you're weak. You're weak. Ryan, Jesus loves this boy. This is his child. Wake him up. Lock him up to something. He won't get out of it right now, Ma. He told me that you won't do nothing now. Well, what do you think he's been doing all this time? The Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. You gotta hold him down. He told me to. Hold him on the ground. David, Mommy's here. Mommy's here. Come on, wake up. Come on. Get up. Come on, let's go. Get out of it. Get out of my son. Get out of my son. Come on. Come on, son. Come on. Get up. Get away from my son. No. I'm your mother. No. David. David. Wake up. Get up. Get up, David. He's the Holy One who loves you. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. You can't set him up because he's not I'm doing that. Just get up. My God, get up.
Man, that is one of the most terrifying pieces of audio. You know, you're listening to this little kid and, you know, the mom's, you're my son. Oh, let me close that down. You hear this voice from this child. It's inhuman. It's terrifying. Mother's calling out in despair. You know, this is my son. And he calls back. If you couldn't hear it, he goes, "You're a bitch." And then starts with that sinister laughing. And as Arnie's, and I thought it was impressive, right? Again, this is kind of playing into what kind of guy Arnie is. This isn't his family. He's 19 years old at the time. The family's kind of bickering in the background. Arnie's focused, man. He's like, hold him down. They said to keep him held down. And he's praying over this kid, man. He's throwing everything he can at this kid to try to release him. And this thing's just mocking. And that laugh at that kind of laugh at the end is absolutely bone chilling, man. That is one of the most terrifying pieces of audio, period, I've ever heard.
I remember hearing this as a kid. Like the Warrens would play this clip. Like this was a case they talked about, and you heard it, and you're like, "That's here in this, you know, Brookfield and the next town over."
Yeah.
And I know it was in the documentary on Discovery Plus. It is bone chilling because it's so compelling. Arnie is trying to help, right? He's being altruistic, like you said, and that's ultimately what may have gotten him into trouble because there's a moment where Arnie is watching David just get literally punched and seemingly stabbed by some invisible force. He jumps on top of him. He takes the cross from around his neck, puts it on the forehead of David and says, you know, pick on someone your own size. Take me instead. And Lorraine would tell you that's the moment when he invited him in. Sounds familiar, right?
Oh, it sounds very familiar. It's terrifying. As a matter of fact, we got a scene here. I'll pull up if I can and get it to the right moment, but it sounds remarkably like this.
Take me. Come into me. God damn you. Take me. Take me.
So you've got a page right out of the Exorcist movie, right? Yeah. And you have to wonder, was Arnie influenced by this movie? Did he see that? Is that why he's thinking, I've got to do something to help this kid come into me?
And it's so important to mention The Exorcist. The movie came out in 1974, just 6 years earlier. And there's not too many people that did not see that movie. And Arnie would have been 12, 13 at the time, like, yeah, he probably saw that movie and it probably scared the hell out of him. The Exorcist was very much on, even though it came out 6 years ago, it was very much on the mind of the popular culture. So that was just a moment, but no one really thought much of it because nothing changed. David was still being attacked. The torment was still going on. But by September, the Catholic Church had authorized the minor rite of exorcism, not the full blown one. But they did get to go to their local Catholic church, and they went through the minor rite of exorcism. It seemed to help, at least for a little bit, but then it was back. The demon was back. But then on, I forget the exact date.
And what's really kind of creepy about this, the demon coming back, right? Ed and Lorraine were not even so sure. They're like, let's wait till midnight and see what happens. And here you've got a kid who claims to have been stabbed by this demon. Mm-hmm. When this thing manifests again and it starts taking over David, he grabs a knife and actually threatens his brother Alan with a knife. And I think these are important foreshadowing for how this story unfolds. But it's pretty chilling. He snatches up this knife and he's threatening to kill his own brother. Again, completely out of context with who this child is.
And just a dangerous situation. Let's face it, not only dangerous for David, but now maybe dangerous for other people in the house. And I think that's why the church maybe moved along the exorcism. And anybody involved in exorcism will tell you they're usually not one and done, right? It's not like you get one and it's all set. It's a process, and it can take weeks, months, even years. One other thing, too, that's important to note about this case Ed Warren had said, you talked about the various stages from oppression to, finally full on possession.
Right.
Ed Warren had said
obsession, and possession. Yeah.
Right. He had never seen a case progress this quickly. Like that, from invitation to oppression to possession can take months or even years for lots of people. And this happened in the span of like days, a couple of weeks to get all the way there. And so Ed Warren had never seen anything like it. The first exorcism didn't seem to work, but then they're going to try one. I forget the exact day, but it was the day Virgin Mary is celebrated in the Catholic Church.
Right.
That would be the day of the next exorcism. And Lorraine Warren especially thought this would be a significant day and have the best shot of success.
Now, we need to mention as well, though, and I don't mean to cut you off, but the whole family is now becoming affected. The mom is feeling this hand grabbing onto her. She's being touched. There's this black shadowy male figure that they're seeing. Now it's not just David. Now Arne and the mom and the sister are having experiences. And this demon starts, and again, you got to give it to his sister because she's taken copious notes and diaries of what's happening every day. This thing is threatening the family, threatening Ed and Lorraine, that if they continue to interfere, he's going to kill them all. And this is when they go back. And now, was this third attempt, was this when the levitation reportedly happened? Or was that on the levitation
second? I think that was the second one. I mean, so yeah, it's just escalating. Everything is just getting worse and worse. It's like nothing anybody had ever seen. And keep in mind,
Jeff, this kid is hovering above the bed and yelling out, "David's not here. I have his soul." What the hell?
No, I know. I mean, I've never seen it, right? I've heard of levitation. I've never seen it. And I struggled with that one, right? Does it become a fishing story where the kid's writhing around and you go, I think he levitated. Like, did he? Or, I mean, I don't know. It's so hard unless you actually see it. But this family, no doubt, is going through something horrible. And when you watch the documentary, when you see Debbie talk about what she watched her brother go through, she cries, right? She all these years later, she's still choked up remembering what her little 11-year-old brother went through. Which again, right now at this moment of the story is still very, very private. We're talking about a handful of people that know what's going on. It is not being, documented for anything other than the Warrens and to get the kid help. That's the only reason they're making recordings, because they want to bring it to the church and say, this is why we need an exorcism, the full Catholic rite of exorcism, because of this tape right here and this tape and these notes and this and this and this and this picture. That's the case they're trying to make for the church.
And they're making obviously a pretty damn good case because they send Father Grasso and Father Virgilak out to take care of this. So this is definitely escalated to a level they realize, we can't just sit by idly waiting for psychological reports and medical exams. There's something amiss here that we need to deal with immediately.
Yep. And so at that point, the young David goes through the rites of exorcism. And I know it sounds sort of anticlimactic, but after the third one, it's peaceful. It seems to be over. And this is September of 1980. And keep in mind, it started July 1st. So, just 2.5 months or so, it seems to have reached a conclusion. And not only that, after everything calms down for the family, for Arne and Debbie, life seems to be getting better because now they're about to move into their own apartment in Brookfield. Debbie's a dog groomer. So there's a dog groomer that has a business, and there's a couple of apartments that she can live in for free. Her and Arne and Debbie's son, and it seems like they're getting their life going, which is great. But it's not quite over yet.
Now, help me out on this because again, watching the documentary, it appears that the priests are working on David, trying to help him, and because of his writhing and the pain and the screams, they stop this exorcism. Which Lorraine. Right. Ed and Lorraine are like, that's a really bad idea because now you got to start from square one again.
Right.
And this kid's already showing you everything you possibly need to see that he's in danger. But the family is at that point, you're killing David. You've got to stop. And again, watching his body twist and writhe and scream as he's being hit with water, holy water, and everything. And there is a very real, they've talked about this numerous different movies and documentaries. There is a very real chance that the afflicted could die during these rites of exorcism. And there was an entire movie, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, that talks about that.
Yeah, it's brutal. That was the first one, because Lorraine had said it was a mistake to stop the exorcism. Because like you said, you pretty much have to start over. And that's why that first one didn't work, is you stopped short. You didn't, drive the demon out. So that's the process going on.
Now, in the second one, is that when Arne is also involved in saying, take on me, be a part of me, get out of this kid?
I believe that happened at the house.
Okay.
That was one of the moments the kid was getting attacked, and Arne was just trying to stand up for the poor kid,
Right.
So yeah, I think that one occurred at the house, but the exorcisms were all at
Arne
the church.
Opened that door, right? So this affliction is still dealing with the child. They go to root this child out, do this final exorcism. The kid seems relieved. There's this respite. Mm-hmm. And then there's quite a while, because that was all in July, and it isn't until like September of 1980.
September is the exorcism.
Oh, that is okay.
Yeah. So it started July 1st. September's the exorcisms, all three.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and so by mid-September or so, it's over. It's over for David. He's got peace, and the family's on edge for days. They're waiting for midnight. Midnight comes and goes, and he's still okay. And another day, and he's still okay. And so everybody starts, after a couple of weeks of peace, seems to be behind them, and they start to move on with their lives. And that's when Debbie and Arne, find a new opportunity to live in town in Brookfield, and get into that apartment. And it seems like a pretty good deal. Debbie's got a job as a dog groomer. Her landlord and boss, they're friendly. They're on friendly terms. They hang out together, and they've got this place, and things are going okay until February of 1981. And that's when the event takes place that kind of changes everything.
Right. All right. Let's lead up to this. Now, what do we know about Arne? Everybody obviously is talking about through the documentaries that he was just a nice guy, and he was congenial. But I thought that I've also heard that, when he was known to drink, he might get a little unruly, as some of us do. Do you know if there's any truth to that aspect of the story?
I guarantee you there's truth to that.
Okay.
Which will become evident in a moment.
Okay.
So the other person who liked to drink a lot was the landlord / friend / boss, right? A guy named Alan Bono. And Alan Bono is kind of like this worldly guy. He lived in Australia for a bunch of years, and just really, an interesting guy, but likes to drink. And so, notorious for like, hey, let's just get some drinks and just keep drinking. And that was not an uncommon thing for them to just kind of hang out and whatever. But it was February 16th, 1981, when Arne woke up that day sick, and he'd never missed a day of work. But he didn't feel good. He didn't feel good at all. And so he actually called in sick, which was highly unusual. But after sleeping for a few hours that morning, he sort of felt better, and he gets up and he goes downstairs to the dog grooming place. And Alan says, hey, let's the three of us go to lunch. Let's go out to lunch and get some food. And so they go, and they start drinking wine at lunch on the 16th. And they come back, and Arne, fixes the stereo in the dog groomer's place. And Alan just keeps drinking throughout the afternoon. And by the late afternoon, he's like, hey, let's not stop the party. Let's go up to your apartment, and we'll get some pizza, and we'll just keep drinking. And Debbie knows, because this has happened before. She's like, no, Alan, let's go to your apartment to continue the party, because,
right.
then they have the ability to leave, not kick out their boss,
right?
Her boss. So they go up to Alan's apartment, and the drinking continues. They get some pizzas. They're getting a little bit belligerent. Everybody's pretty drunk, and Debbie wants to leave. Alan's like, no, stay. And I think he tries to grab her. And that's when Arne sort of snaps a little bit and gets, no, we're out of here. We're leaving. and pulls Debbie out of the apartment, and they start to walk out, and Alan chases them. And then that's when Debbie says something completely changed in Arne. His face changed, his facial expressions. He was not there. He was not himself. And she says all she recalls is the two men sort of collided like they're fighting. And the next thing she knows, Alan just slumps over onto the ground, and she sees a knife on the ground glowing. And Arne is in a daze and just walks away. And she didn't know where the knife came from. She didn't know anything. But suddenly this guy slumped over. They call the ambulance, call the police. He's rushed to Danbury Hospital, and Arne just wandered off into the night. A couple hours later, Alan will die from being stabbed multiple times, and he's gone. And Arne is picked up about 2 hours later by the police, just wandering by the woods, by the street. And the police even said, like, you know, he was just dazed. He didn't put up a fight. He was confused. Like, go with us. Okay, sure. I'll go with you if you want. You know, that's fine. And gets in the car and brings it in. Let me tell you how small Brookfield, Connecticut is. This was the first murder in the history of the town ever. The hundreds of years it had been there had never been a murder. To the police, this looks so open and shut. Two guys drinking all day. They fight. Maybe, you know, the landlord made a pass at the girl and people got mad. Someone had a knife, stabbed the other guy, killed him. This is it. It's over, right? That's an open and shut case for murder. And then Ed and Lorraine Warren get involved again. And that's why we're talking about this right now.
Right.
If that was the end of the story right there, it'd be gone. It would be so obscure, like we would never ever talk about it, and you never would have heard about the exorcism. But right here, Ed and Lorraine Warren jump in and say, wait a minute. Arne was there for all these exorcisms. He was there in the house. He's not responsible for his actions. He was possessed and therefore should not be held accountable. They help hire Marty Manella, a lawyer who's a devout Roman Catholic, and they're instrumental in saying, look, we want to bring exorcists, priests, clergy, put them all on the stand and prove that exorcism's real, that people can be possessed, and that ultimately Arne Johnson should not be convicted of murder because he was not under his own power.
Now, what do you think about the case that when David first had his experience, the first question Arne, and he says it in the documentary, is, hey, did you find some pills? Maybe you took a pill. Were you, he's alluding to maybe there's drugs around, right? And
it might have been, yeah.
Could have been. Debbie sees the knife and it's glowing, right? And Arnie's in this kind of weird haze. Is there any mention during any of this of drug use or, anything that would lead us to believe that maybe it was more natural than supernatural?
I saw in the books and in the newspaper articles, I saw no mention of drugs, but everyone freely admitted they drank all day. Right. So there was absolutely alcohol. So we know that for sure. But
now, again, here's the headline of the day: Brookfield Demons murder trial to open with devil for a defense. So this is record breaking, right? I mean, the fact that we're really what they're going to do is put the devil on trial in this case because they want to prove that this is real. And I've got to guess this is obviously it's getting a lot of attention. The attorney's kind of like, let me see what you have to say before I agree to this. They show the outline of everything that's gone on, right? And again,
play the tape. The tape is the thing Manelli says convinced him, hearing that audio.
Right. Now, you've also got a kid who claims to have been stabbed by this demon, pulls a knife on his own brother at one point, and then how does Arne kill Mr. Bono?
With a knife.
With a knife. Yep. It's pretty interesting and compelling to follow that thread through this as well. But they're really trying to build this case up. And I wonder, you talk about this before it even goes to trial. How is that impacting and affecting the people of the community at the time?
So the Warrens turned it into an international media circus. There's no question. Because they started saying, like, hey, you put your hand on the Bible and you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, so help you God. The court believes in God. Don't they have to believe in the devil? And I love, and you can see this in the documentary, some of the man on the street interviews from 1981, the old Well, what do you think? Like, oh, I think it's ludicrous. Do you believe in God? Well, sure I do. I go to church. Well, don't you believe in the devil? Yeah. And you can see that sort of discomfort start to come over their face where they're like, yeah, maybe I'm not so sure, and so for some people it was like, yes, this not only validates, what may have happened, but it validates my belief system, my Roman Catholicism. It validates, that there are angels and demons and God and devil and so on. What no one talks about in this is how incredibly, from a potentially selfish place, Ed and Lorraine Warren were coming. I don't think it was so much about getting Arne off for murder. I think it was about validating their work and them, in the court of law. Ed Warren was hung up on that. He talked about this case over and over. And a quick other case he worked on that he bragged about every chance you'd give him is, I proved in a court of law that ghosts are real. And this was in a completely separate case in Connecticut. A woman moved into a haunted apartment, and he went and presented all this evidence and said, this place has a stigma. It was haunted. The landlord knew it. And this person shouldn't be held liable to the lease. And ultimately, the judge allowed them to break the lease. Maybe not believing in ghosts per se, but at least saying, well, the place had a stigma and you didn't disclose it. But Ed took that as validation for his life's work, and he got to prove ghosts are real in a court of law. That's how Ed would tell the story. And this was him trying to do that on a huge scale, right? There's a murder involved. And so I don't know how much he cared about Arne Johnson or not. But I think for him, it was more of an opportunity to grab the spotlight, to be in the spotlight, to be in the media and validate everything and just put it all there in front of the judge, not just the court of the legal system, but the court of public opinion.
Now, I know a lot of people had asked me prior to this program tonight, did Ed truly suffer a heart attack as portrayed in the movie The Conjuring during this case? Was there any kind of medical condition he dealt with?
I thought that was years and years later.
That's what I thought as well. But in the movie,
no, I don't think so.
Yeah, he suffered a stroke, and I think in 2005, early part of 2006. So yeah, they show that in this movie as though the demon is trying to stop Ed Warren at any cost. So he suffers a heart attack, and he's kind of throughout the movie dealing with the repercussions of that. But I didn't know if he ever talked openly about being affected or afflicted from dealing with the demon in that case.
He talked about being affected and afflicted all the time. He would say stuff follows me home, like they have my number. He talked about being on, I think it was like Interstate 84 or something in Pennsylvania. And he said, a demon attacked his car and they drove off the road. Like he blamed it on a demon, like all the time, not for this case in particular, but just in general. He was quick to say that they had his number and he had theirs. Ed believed he was a warrior, right? He was not just a ghost investigator trying to capture a ghost on film. He was a religious warrior who came from a very Roman Catholic background, had his weapons, which would be holy water and crucifixes and religious medals and prayers. And believed in evil and believed in fighting evil. That was his line over and over again. And this case for him brought it all together. However, the demon didn't have to stop Ed Warren. The demon had to stop the judge because that's who's ultimately going to make a lot of decisions here. And that's when things changed on the case, is when the judge sort of opened up the proceedings.
Right. Now, this is pretty bizarre, right? I mean, they're going to go to court. They've already talked about the fact that they're going to really put the devil on trial.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You get your attorney in there. They do their opening deal. He stands up to make his opening arguments, and the judge steps up and he goes, "Hey, let's just get this straight. Yeah. This demon defense shit, it's not going to cut it in a court of law."
Yeah,
I'm not saying the devil doesn't exist, but it can't in this story. We need to just focus on this, which means that then Marty Manila has to flip quickly and figure out a new tact with really no time on how do you deal with this. This was your battering ram to shatter, the glass ceiling and put this on trial. Obviously Ed and Lorraine believed Arne was possessed.
Hey, real quick, did you see the date on that article you just put up?
Let me pull it up here. October 29th, 1981.
2 days before Halloween. I don't know, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Just
No, that's, yeah. A judge Wednesday threw out the demon defense of a murder defendant who claimed he was possessed by the devil when he stabbed a friend to death. I'm not going to allow the defense of demonic possession, Superior Court Judge Robert J. Callahan told lawyers for Arne Cheyenne Johnson on the opening day of Johnson's trial. Evidence of demonic possession is simply not relevant. Now, that's an interesting comment to me. He's not throwing it out, but he's saying it's not relevant. But it should be relevant, right? All of the laws that we have are predicated on the Bible and God and thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not do this. But then the concept that the devil doesn't exist or that he has no power or authority over us is kind of an interesting trip.
This to me, this is the best part of this discussion of this whole case, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Let's say the devil possessed him and made him kill Alan Bono right there. So if you believe in basically any of the major world religions, we have free will. Mm-hmm. We have free will to choose to do good or choose to do bad. If a demon can completely overtake our body, and then we lack free will. And so, come on, right? That's not how it works. We have to be able to overcome those urges. We have all been in rush hour traffic, all of us at some point, right? And
Let's
someone cuts you off, right? Mm-hmm. You know, like riding down the breakdown lane and cuts into traffic and you're like, I want to kill you. But we don't, right? I'm angry. I'm gripping the wheel. I'm super mad.
But the free will aspect is that David would not yield. He said, no, you can't have my soul. I'm not giving up my soul. He fought it, but this thing kept breaking him down. It kept with the oppression and infestation to the point that as a child, you at some point say to end it, stop. Yes. That's how torture works, right? That's right. Waterboarding and torture is you eventually get the person to a point where free will is gone. Fine. If it stops my pain, take it away. So to say, that it affects free will. Well, it does. That's the whole concept is we have to freely give of ourselves, whether it's in a moment of desperation or not. It's that moment of just fine, take me. And Arne said, take me, get out of the boy, take me, opening that door. So I understand your point on this, but I'm just saying as the supernatural aspect of it, it's compelling to me that you'd love to see this play out in the court of law, not for entertainment focus, but to see what their concepts of this would be. And isn't it interesting, just as an aside, that on the first day of court, while they're getting ready, lights are flickering, strange things are happening in the court, and they're sending maintenance to go, and maintenance cannot figure out why these things are happening.
Right.
And then the judge is like, let's just stop this BS right now. There is no demons, there's no devil, there's no possession.
So here's the other thing. Had the judge allowed this,
right,
for some crazy reason, after he's disbarred, by the way, 10 minutes later, anybody who's accused of murder in the United States would forever use this defense. All of them, 100%, no question. Atheists, religious people, non-religious people, to be like, oh yeah, Arne Johnson, devil made me do it. Maybe the devil did, but like, how come I can resist in rush hour traffic to not kill a person, but you couldn't stop it? Like, if you lack
in Arnie's case, he was schwieling. I don't, this when we go out, I don't drink that often when we do live events, because there's two Daves. There's cuddly, affectionate Dave, and then there's I'm going to kill somebody Dave. And I've learned that line, so I'm very cautious. Like when I go to events and my wife is there, I don't drink. I let her drink and have fun because she's attractive. I don't mind men looking at her because why not? She's attractive, right? And I'm cool
that
with
distracts,
that. But when I'm drinking, all of a sudden, Jeff looking at my wife, bad thoughts start coming into my head, right?
Yeah, but I'm not looking at her. I'm looking at you.
I know, but I'm just saying. So in those instances, there's a weakness. If this devil has now got this weakness on Arne and he sees this guy's drunk, this is my chance.
Yeah.
He's already invited me in. And right now his resistance is nothing. I can control this. That's an interesting aspect to the supernatural side.
So hold on. I want to talk to drunk Dave for a second. Can you get it?
Which one? Do you want affectionate drunk Dave or I'm going to kill somebody?
I'm going to kill someone.
Okay.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Angry, violent drunk Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Are you there?
Oh, I'm here. What do you want?
Have you ever killed anyone?
Maybe. I think my lawyers would tell me just not to speak right now, Jeff. Right.
Yeah. So you haven't. You have
Right.
not. So no matter how much you wanted to, you didn't.
But I could see in those instances, right? I'm not making excuses, but you could see in those instances, I guess I am making excuses.
You're making
That's when your
excuses.
tolerance is lowered. Listen, we're all one bad day off from being a killer. We're one. You walk in on somebody on top of your wife or daughter, violating. There's no doubt you've just become a murderer, right?
Yep, no question.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, you'd call me and a tarp and a shovel would appear, and
I'm going to need some bleach and a shovel, Dave, and some help.
Uncle Dave would help make these things disappear.
Don't ask anything. Just just start digging. No, I get that. I get that. I remember, for Ghost Adventures, I was interviewing a corrections officer at one of the many haunted prisons we filmed at, and he said, sometimes you realize the difference between you, a corrections officer, and the inmate is like literally a 15, 20-second period of time where someone made a horrible choice and now they're in here. And in other circumstances, like, you guys would be fishing buddies. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's some people. He's like, some people I think were just born evil and they're going to do evil. And the best we can do is just lock them up and keep them away from people to keep everybody safe. But a lot of people just made a horrible choice. Maybe that choice was to drink that much and get yourself into a place where murder was an option. But whatever, you're responsible for that, right? You are, and so you mentioned before how David tried to get worn down, but ultimately did not. Survived it, went through the exorcisms. Arne had a moment,
but
right?
We don't know that. We don't know if David didn't, because they just found David collapsed and then things went horribly wrong. Did he finally say in a moment of desperation to stop the pain and the abuse? Fine, you can come in. And is that what then led to possession? Because levitation, eyes changing, vocal intonations is no longer oppression. It's no longer infestation. This is in him. So he may have broken at some point. But again, does the devil realize there's only so much I can do with an 11-year-old? But Arnie's strong. He's young. I can do much more damage with this guy.
It's this whole case started this huge debate, a huge international discussion. But also too, you got to remember this sort of line of defense and even prosecution has happened before, right? Salem, Massachusetts, 1692. Spectral evidence that the Salem in 1692 changed the world, because spectral evidence was no longer allowed in the courts. And keep in mind, we were England, so that was on both sides of the ocean. Like, no more spectral evidence. It's got to be hard facts, not someone saying, I see a shadowy figure whispering in her ear or whatever. And so I think the judge made the right call on this. I really do.
Right. No doubt.
Yeah.
Like I said, just the researcher and investigator in me would love to have seen it play out, to see, them dismantle that idea and concept. But then you hear it, man, I've doing True Crime Tuesday for years. I've talked to prosecutors. I've talked to victims. I've talked to everything in between, and journalists. At the beginning of the Bundy tapes on Netflix, in the opening intro, they talk about, and then his eyes went black. And we actually have audio from one of the authors who did a book about him, talking about the fact that at one point when they uncovered the little girl's body and they bring it up in court, they said everybody could physically see Bundy's face contort and change, and this inhuman scent of sulfur emitted from him. So, it's real easy to say, oh, this isn't possible. And we all want that to be the case because we don't want to believe anybody as awful as Ted Bundy could exist. But there are multiple cases where behind the scenes, the attorneys will talk, and they're in books. And sometimes it's just one sentence in the book that talks about the fact that there was something more at play in this human than just being a bad guy. I believe there was something inherently evil, or I saw this, or I saw that, which leads you to believe there's something much darker about that person than just you and I getting drunk and being pissed off,
right?
Bitch slapping each other in a parking lot.
Stop. No, I get it. But you know what? So maybe, by the way, maybe this movie and this documentary and that cat are forcing the discussion that you want, right? That you're asking about, right? So maybe we're having it right now and getting people thinking. And that's why I love this case, right? So you have to ask questions about free will. And I know we've talked to, you and I have friends who are demonologists or work in this, who will say, well, when you relinquish your free will, like when you invite the demon in, you have given up your free will, and thus, but I'm like, but it's still, okay, free will or not, someone murders someone that I love, devil made you do it. I don't care who made you do it. I want you punished to the fullest extent of the law.
No, I agree. I concur 100% with you on that. But you see these things, and it makes you wonder what really is going on out there. The evil in people, and what took place with my friend being murdered and 2 of her children slaughtered. It's hard to believe that that's just humans. That humans are that inherently evil. That there's something else.
I don't think we are inherently evil, but I do think evil's in the world. And I think we all have a duty to not just ourselves, but to our friends, our family, our neighbors, strangers across town. I think we have a duty to work at it and keep it away. I can't keep it away from other people. I can keep it away from me. You know what I mean? And I can do my part to try to spread kindness and love and good vibes and stuff like that, and keep the bad stuff out. If we all do it, if we all do our one little part, then things get better. That kind of evil happens when people are in bad, desperate places. So how do we stop that? How do we lift people up? And I think that's there's one question asked in the Bible, right? Am I my brother's keeper? Right? Cain killed Abel. God said, "Where's your brother?" And Cain says, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Arguably, the whole rest of the Bible, the whole rest of the book, is trying to answer that question. Am I my brother's keeper? Am I responsible for others around me? And ultimately, the answer is pretty much well, yeah, if you can help, you help. If you can, yes, please help your brother and everybody around you. And so I think that's our responsibility, and we owe it to our kids to teach them that. We owe it to lead by example and do our best to make it better.
Now, it has to show an openness and willingness to accept this, even though you're in this court case. That they've been leading up to the devil is, in charge here. The devil made me do it defense. And then it gets thrown out quickly. But obviously, it's still in the minds of jurors and of everybody because of the way this case unfolds, right? Because, he is found not guilty of murder.
Correct.
I think November 24th, 1981, not guilty of murder. But he is convicted of manslaughter in the first degree.
Right.
So you've got this case that then tells a different story. And then he is sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison for this crime. So it has to be playing, and even in the judge's mind, in the back of his mind, he's got to be in a place where he could have really thrown the book and gone for the full letter of the law. But even the judge seems not that he's willing to admit that there's a devil at play here, but it seems like he was willing to bargain.
That's one way to look at it. But also, 2 guys drinking all day, getting into a drunken brawl. There's got to be some sort of self-defense there, right? You're fighting. So, but yet someone pulled a knife and killed somebody. If no one ever claimed the devil was involved, would he have gotten the same conviction is my question. Right. And if you looked at other comparable cases where no one claims they were possessed by the devil, just, my gosh, we were drinking since noon. We got in this fight. I had my knife on me. I wasn't even thinking, and I just pushed it into him. And but he punched me, I punched back, and then I stabbed him. Right. It's not murder, but it's not quite self-defense either. So ultimately he only served 5 years in jail and was out. And
because of good behavior, which also tells you something about who this guy is. Was it that one moment where we can all go good or bad? That one moment in that line, and he cut, and that was it. And that his true nature was to be this good guy. He's out in 5 years.
And so whose soul did the devil get? Bono's? Why Bono's? He was a murder victim, right? So and Arne, we don't know of any exorcisms that Arne went through. So it's just over. The devil got what he wanted. The devil didn't get a soul. I mean, Bono might have been a great guy and gone to heaven. He was murdered. He's a victim. The devil doesn't get that one, right?
So what do you think then? Looking at the complete way this rolls out, knowing that there was a possession and an exorcism reported, and this kid is now, I also want to, on the skeptical side, as a kid, I used to be able to do weird voices and blah, blah, blah. And after watching The Exorcist, who didn't, it's a lovely day for an exorcism, right? You just create all these voices. So to say, oh, well, this kid sounds guttural and creepy, although he's acting out of character, he's acting strange. He's doing and seeing things, and there are eyewitnesses that he's levitating, that other people are seeing things. This all leads eventually down the road to Arne possibly being possessed to create this murder. What do you believe? Do you believe that a possession ever took place in this case?
Yes, I do. I believe David. I believe David was possessed because the church got involved, and the church does not just give out an exorcism ever. Right. I was raised Catholic. They would not just give it away. They would have investigated and deemed it worthy enough to do that. So I believe that there was something going on, and I believe it mostly because of watching Debbie describe what happened to her brother all these years later. That was this past year. She described it, right?
Sadly, Debbie Glatzel did pass away in April of this year. April of 2021.
Just passed away. And so when you see her emotion when describing the torment her brother went through, that family went through something. I have no question. Whether it passed to Arne in that one moment, that one I struggle with. But I do believe the Glatzels went through something big. I sure do.
Right. Now, Jeff, we've always been very open on the show to give both sides a chance to discuss this. And obviously we played out. I feel in your way that David Glatzel was definitely possessed. I feel that there's the possibility that Arne was possessed, and maybe in that 5 years in prison, religion is a very big part of many convicts. Maybe he was able to beat back that devil. They just don't talk about it. But I did place a call, and I wanted to give the devil his due. And I asked, hey, devil, did you do it? And he says, no, it wasn't me. wasn't the devil. So I don't know. You can't trust the devil in these situations either. But what a chilling, creepy case. Would you say this is truly one of the defining cases for Ed and Lorraine Warren? Or is it just one of many?
It's one of a few defining cases. And you had mentioned earlier that this might be the last Conjuring movie. If I were a betting man, and I have no inside information, truly, I'm just the case of Frenchie in Warren, Massachusetts.
Right. Satan's Harvest is the name of that
Satan's
book.
Harvest. In fact, if you see the movie The Nun, which was one of the
spin-off,
at the very end, the guy, they're like, "Hey, what's your name?" Well, they call me Frenchie, and I was like, foreshadowing. Like that's going to be the guy. And I've been to Warren, Mass multiple times, and I know people that knew Frenchie, and that's a case the Warrens talked about a lot as well. I can't imagine them not turning that one into a movie.
I thought for sure we would have seen it by now. My main thought that this may be the last one is simply because Ed is portrayed older in this and fragile and has this heart attack, and is, it just seems like a very, I don't know. To me, it felt like this was obviously their story continued for many years, up until the 2000s, before Ed's stroke and eventual passing. But it's chilling to think that, that there are so many other cases that they were involved in. But yeah, the Satan's Harvest case, I would love for them to examine that, and the werewolf case. Those to me seem like the two that are served up and should be shown. They allude to it. Yeah. They allude to the werewolf case in Annabelle Comes Home, but we have no backstory to it. So I'd love for people to get that. But yeah, if you haven't read Satan's Harvest, folks, there's 3 books in my life that scared the living shit out of me. Pet Cemetery was one of them. Satan's Harvest was definitely the other one. And Jeff's book on Kilimanjaro. No, it scares the hell out of me, because there's no way you're going to catch me on the top of any mountain peak unless they put McDonald's 24/7 McRibs up on the top. I might join you up there for that.
There were a ton up there. Just
son of a
McRibs everywhere.
Let's go. I'm
They
going to
were
make you
coming
look
out of
like
the
a fool.
volcano.
It took you like 3 days. I'll be up there in an hour and a half. It's McRibs. I'll be there. Amazing case. I know we're going a little long here. Is there any questions from the audience that have hung in with us? I've missed quite a bit because we've been talking for quite a while here. If there are any questions, I'll try to address them. Cindy Brown weighs in. She always has some great insight. Kids are more open to spiritual energies, and so they're easier affected by something so powerful and evil. I would think that they would also be easier to break because they're fear and because they don't want to be hurt or frightened anymore, that could be part of it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, I like this. I just saw The Nun and now I'm scared of nuns. No joke. I told a nun to be gone, Satan. I like that.
As a kid that went to CCD, which is not Catholic school, but it's like, Catholic Christian doctrine, and it was taught by some nuns. They're frightening. No question. They all are.
Well, yeah, but what position,
except the flying nun. The flying nun wasn't scary. The rest of them
is adorable.
Yeah.
But what person in a power position as a child isn't a little terrifying to you? Erin Higgins says she has a question. We'll get to it, Erin. Let's see that question.
Time to type.
We've got a question here from Heidi Lynn Schiffler Severson. I think that already takes place for your question. Your name's just too damn long. Do we know anything about Arnie's upbringing?
So, Connecticut guy, we sort of jump into the story when he's 18 years old. Yeah, we don't know a lot about him, just that he's a, local guy. And he grew up with Debbie, so they knew each other from childhood. But then, that's about it.
I'm going to bring this one up just because it irritates me. And Kristen, I'm calling you out for it. Why didn't Jeff clue the Holzer Files team in about most of the Oceanborn Mary story before they bothered to go to Henniker? Because then the show wouldn't have happened. Jeff and I are best buddies. We talk all the time. And he told me when I said we're going to investigate the Oceanborn Mary house, he said, well, good luck with that. If you need me, I'm here. We legitimately didn't want to. We wanted to unfold. And yes, he's done episodes and he's talked about it, but we wanted to look beyond what was already said. And that's what goes on. So Kirsten, that's why. It's not because we were keeping Jeff out of the loop. It's not because I don't trust Jeff. I don't trust Jeff. It was just simply that we have a story to tell, and it was one of Hans Holzer's most famous stories. So if it was called the Jeff Belanger Files, we would have gone to Jeff, but we weren't. We went to Hans Holzer. So
I would watch the Jeff Belanger Files.
You do every day. I watch them as well. Let's see here. I don't see the question from the gal who said she had a question. She never wrote one. I thought Lorraine Warren said that Amityville case is what eventually was responsible for killing Ed, and that came from Richard Jennings.
On that one, I think because Amityville was so famous, they were very happy to attach their name to it at any chance they had. Mm-hmm. This is where, and again, I'm not trying to knock them down at all, but they made a living at this, mm-hmm. and it was part show, right? And so Amityville got everyone's attention all the time. So, in fact, when they drove off the road, I mentioned earlier about on Interstate 84. Ed had said oh, we passed this town and it's so beautiful out here. And we said, I think not even Amityville can get to us out here. And that's when the car went off the road. So anyway,
Aaron Higgins says, I was curious if the movie, I don't understand the question. I was curious if the movie while he's in jail really happened with Ed and Lorraine. Do you know, did they visit with him in jail and deal with things there as well?
I don't know. I don't know of any jail visitations. My guess is they probably moved on once he went to jail, moved on to the next case.
I think this is the cleaned up version. Right. I'm curious if the devil came into the jail and did they have the retired priest?
Yeah, I don't know anything about. Once he goes to jail, the story kind of ends. We don't hear about it. And so Arne Johnson's in the documentary, right? And we get to hear from him. I have so many questions. If we could track him down. I don't know if he's going to still talk or maybe he's the door's open now. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I've got him in my trunk, and as soon as he's willing to, I told him I'd let him out. So Libby says, any information on where this demon went or where it came from? Did they ever do any kind of research, do you know, on the house, diedinhouse.com? Are there any deaths associated with it that we know about?
So, so again, the house in Newtown, even if you read the book, right, the original book about it, the house in Newtown is just a place, right? It's not, there's no significance they attach to it other than this thing was sort of lingering around looking for an opportunity. And once, David came by, that was the opportunity. And then they don't talk about it again. Most of the action happens at the Glatzel house in Brookfield. But it doesn't seem to be the house. It seems to be David.
Jeremy says, I'm glad that Jeff is being real about the Warrens. I've always found them to be carnies. A lot of people kind of get that sense. You've known them and been friends with them. I don't feel that way. I feel that, obviously in the retelling of stories, layers get added or things get a little bit more exciting, but I don't believe that they were just carnies. I believe that they believed in what they did 150%.
They did. There's no question they believed in it. But at the same time, they also fed themselves with it. You know what I mean? They also paid their mortgage with it. And so, I've watched them sort of like straddle that line. Like, hey, we want to share this and we're spiritual warriors, and it's $10 a seat to get in. Mm-hmm. And hey, I've done it. You've done it, right? Like we charge for our books. We charge to give lectures and programs at events and all that other stuff. Like we just do. And if people don't want to pay it, they don't have to, and they don't have to go. Right. So there's plenty of stuff that we put out there for free for public consumption. So I get it. I get that, like you're trying to be marketable, but at the same time be authentic. And that's the challenge.
Are you a little worried that now at these events, people are going to try to feed me liquor and get me mad to see if you and I square off at some point?
No, Dave, it's not that hard to feed you liquor. Like I've seen it.
Jeff, just so you guys know, Jeff's got a fanny pack that he keeps a donut in at all times. So if I start getting unruly, he just shakes it and throws it. I run like a puppy after a stick, and he's out of there. There's no problem.
We were at an event recently. I saw Drunk Dave, and a fight broke out. And it was you and I. I took one half of that fight. You took the other half, and we totally diffused it. And we were both drinking all night.
Yeah, we went from sloshy, slippery Dave and Jeff to, hey, come on, guys, let's break this shit.
Yeah, let's not do this here. Come on. Yeah.
We were good. Jeff, you can follow Jeff and what he does and the things he's working on by visiting jeffbelanger.com. You can also check out one of the best resources on the web, ghostvillage.com.
That takes me back.
Yeah, that's you were one of the very first paranormal sites I ever came upon back in the day. I think you built it, was it 1887?
Yes.
And, but you're also the host of the very popular Our New England Legends. Tell us a little bit about that and how people can find you and where they can listen to you.
Yeah, so the podcast is called New England Legends. We do it every week for the last 202 weeks in a row without missing one. And it's they're fun. They're short, like 10, 12 minutes long, scripted stories about weirdness in New England. Lots of ghosts, weird history, aliens, lake monsters, cryptids, things like that. And it's just sort of like, how did this legend get to right now is what we explore. And it's been super fun. And in fact, next week, we're doing this case, the Devil Made Me Do It case. That'll be next Thursday.
Well, what's nice with these, they're very compact. They're easy to listen to. They're what is the average time? Like anywhere between 10 minutes to 20 minutes long? 10
to 15, really.
Right.
Yeah, they're concise. We use voice actors. So when we get old newspaper articles with quotes, we have voice actors. Dave's been the voice of God more than once when we have a biblical quote. Anyway, it's been so much fun to sort of like celebrate these stories and kind of build a community around it.
Very cool. You can also check out, he's got a great audio book out there, Who Haunts the White House? And you'll hear a bunch of us doing voices of former presidents and dignitaries in that book.
Do you remember which one you did?
I don't offhand. I don't.
It's funny. Like, I've been doing paranormal for so long, and I've got friends with great voices, like Dave and our buddy Tim Ellis and stuff. And so it's kind of neat when you have like these voice projects, and I'll like text Dave. I'll be like, dude, can you do a line from the Bible, voice of God? But I need it by like tomorrow. It's like, all right, I'm recording at 3. I'll do it then. Thanks, man.
I think I counted. I think I've been God 3 to 4 times on your podcasts. I'm very pleased with that. And I'm jealous if anybody else gets that role. I better be the only God you call upon.
Well, I think at this point, like, to be consistent, I need it to be you, right? If you're like, I'm not around this week, I'll be like, oh no, I better save the story for another week.
I'm like your George Burns. I will forever be your version of God. Hey, folks, join me at the Para-Unity Con in Minnesota, July 8th through the 10th. I think it is. I've got it July 9th through the 11th, but whatever. You'll find all the info at mnparacon.com. com. And there's a whole slate of great speakers. I think Dustin Perry, our buddy, is going to be there. Chris Fleming's going to be there. Members from Ghost Hunters, Ghost Nation. Steve Gonzalez is going to be on hand. I think, I'm trying to remember. There's so many. Chad Lundberg. There's so many different people that are going to be there. We'll be doing talks and conversations all weekend. And that's coming up next week. So make sure if you're in the Minnesota area, come on out, spend a little time. Jeff, it's always a pleasure catching up with you, man. Thank you for coming on and doing this. And it's a great time to have pulled together on this, especially on the 41st anniversary of the beginning of this case. There's only one guy I would count on for this story, and it's you. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Dave. Good to see you again. All
right, everybody, stay safe. Be cool. We'll be back again next week with more episodes of the Best in Paranormal Talk Radio. Make sure you check out our NewEnglandLegends.com for updates on Jeff. And I believe if you have the Darkness Radio phone app, if you open up the Darkness Radio phone app, you can actually find the New England Legends podcast in there. We've got it as part of our cluster so that we make it even easier for you to find. So check that out and go check out JeffBelanger.com. Jeff, one more time, tell them about your book, Kilimanjaro. This is one of the best books. Folks, you're going to love this in so many different ways. Please tell them about it. And if you've got a copy, hold it up so they can see it and know what to look for.
It's not nearby, but I just had a book come out a couple months ago called The Call of Kilimanjaro, Finding Hope Above the Clouds. It's about my 2017 climb to the top of Africa in memory of my brother-in-law who had passed away from cancer. And it was really the most profound personal experience I've ever gone through. Deeply spiritual, physical, and emotional, and just kind of soul-bearing. So appreciate there's been a lot of great feedback so far. You can see the reviews on Amazon, but wherever books are sold, Call of Kilimanjaro.
Get it, read it, you'll love it. It does have a great spirituality and paranormal angle to it, and just a great endurance book. It's so well written. Everybody that I've talked to that's read it loves it. My daughter borrowed it because she wanted to read Jeff's book and loves it. So check it out for yourself. Thank you all. And, the devil made me do it. Isn't going to float in court. So just knock that shit off and just be good people. That's all we're going to ask from you. And if you see Jeff and I at a location like Michigan Paracon, feel free to feed us all the liquor you possibly can and see if you can stir up some interaction between the two of us. All right, everybody, take care. We'll see you again next week right here on the Best in Paranormal Talk Radio. I'm Dave. That's Jeff. Tim back at home. You've been listening to Darkness Radio.